Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Thursday, April 8th, 2021, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research Channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. All right, guys, well, in this video, I thought I might read to you this article from Archaeology in Bulgaria about unusually tall skeleton found there in a mound, which is very interesting because it seems to be very similar to those mounds you might find anywhere in North America that we've talked about in the past on this channel and many different media sources. So uh, that's one interesting thing about it. Another interesting thing about it is, the fact that it is unusually tall. Of course, there's no reason for that, and I have to explain these sorts of things. But I already covered giants in the Black Sea area in a video of mine. I covered this article on from um, Ancient Origins here about a find in Georgia, and Georgia's sort of on the opposite side of the Black Sea, with Turkey being sort of in the bottom between. Bulgaria is like on the opposite side from Georgia, so just like directly outside, with Turkey being down the bottom here, and Russia being on top there, and these other countries surrounding Bulgaria here. But I did this article about it in Ancient Origins, covered this article here about how they found these large skeletons. You see the guy holding the tibia there, rather large, and it's very heavy skull here, thick skulls, and they lost the bones. And just it's the 21st century, and they seem to, these people from these sort of areas of the world don't have a particularly stellar record as far as the skeletal remains, but it seems to be a long history of large skeletal remains disappearing. Of course, all the artifacts and remains of, that fit the current narrative, the way that it's described by most academics, those don't seem to disappear anytime. But, all these other ones, oversized artifacts, more ancient, inexplicable, artifacts and skeletal remains all seem to disappear. And, of course, it's still going on in the 21st century, despite the fact that so much has been written about these things in the past. But let's take a look at this article here because it's interesting. And again, here probably you wouldn't hear about it at all unless, following me on this channel here, bringing you these articles and talking about these things. But it's very interesting. And of course, at the end of this article, they talk about some of the other accounts of giants there in Bulgaria, and of course, how they sort of dismiss them and squash them before this particular find. And the article is from 2017, so it's a pretty contemporary article. That's why I guess you don't find it in Greater Ancestors website. Chris Leslie hasn't updated it here. And here is the article from 2017 from news in Bulgaria there. Unusually tall skeleton, severed arm found in 4,000-year-old Bronze Age burial mound near Bulgaria's Black Sea coast. And you see this burial here. It actually was a walled-in area, sort of like a burial tomb with walls that were painted red. And it's just an overview of it. And it's just rather large person. You can see the bones are pretty long. And then, of course, you have to remember bones shrink over time. Again, who knows how much exactly, but whatever it is, they have shrunk somewhat. And, we have to rely on, their precision methods if they are. We don't know, but another thing you have to keep in mind too is about the bell beaker culture there in Europe, who also is known for these burial mounds that seem so similar to this one found in Bulgaria. And what did the Belviga culture introduce into Europe? Well, according to mainstream, they introduced metallurgy. So when you hear about the Belviga culture, I have to cover this more in detail in another video, I think. But just to refer back to it, I've read from this before, but the physical anthropology of these people, all right? Historical craniometric studies found that the Beaker people appeared to be of a different physical type than those earlier populations in the same geographic areas. Again, the timeline, how old these things are, I think they have it all jumbled up. The flow of these people seemed to be chaotic, wandering around Europe. We heard from Charles C. Mann's book that back during the times when these people existed, or shortly thereafter, there were all these cataclysms going on. What was going on in the past? It's not so clear. We don't know if the interdisciplinary studies of these things are done properly, and they're all up to snuff with contemporary archaeological science, but none of these things are taken into consideration. But they were described as tall, heavy boned, and brachiocephalic. Tall is, just, sort of a, you know, dry euphemism for, bigger. Again, they like to do these things, but we'll have to read from this more because it's interesting what they say about these things. You have to consider these things again, these mound builder cultures all around the world, not only with the Belviga people, it seems to be everywhere, including here. So let's talk about it a little bit and read from the article here. The skeleton of a Bronze Age man who is untypically tall for his time has been discovered in a 4,000-year-old burial mound by archaeologists near Bulgaria's Black Sea town of Primorsko, with the grave also containing the arm of another person. The grave of the man, who is about 1.90 to 2 meters, 6 feet 3 to 6 foot 6 inches tall, an unusual height for the Bronze Age populations of today's Bulgaria, has been found in a large burial mound, tumulus, in an area known as Silhilyar in the country's southeast. Daniel Pantov, director of Primorsko Museum of History, has announced Silili Har, a picturesque area near the Black Sea town of Primorsko, contains a number of prehistoric ancient burial mounds, which unfortunately keep getting targeted by treasure hunters. So, here, like so many places around the world, including the United States, just these things are not protected in the name of progress, and for whatever malfeasance is involved with these things. Just all the cultures that came before, all the cultures we know that seem to be important cultures historically, probably aren't the original cultures of all these geographic locations and these constructions around the planet, etc. It seems to be just everywhere in the world, no matter what you can write, some civilization that you can refer to, seem to have stumbled across more advanced buildings and engineering and all this kind of stuff, and they're not even the people who built these things all over the world. So what did they have any strike? They can't even, folks, they can't even figure out the dark ages, okay, more recent historical times, okay. They just don't not sure about what was going on in the dark ages in the medieval times. So if they're not sure about that, how precise are they about all these previous time periods? Okay, so you have to ask yourself these questions, all right. So what do they really know about this? It's all hypothetical anyway. Silihar is the same area in which, in 2016, made headlines with discovery of ancient Thracian of an ancient Thracian gold treasure. The Primorsko gold treasure was formally shown to the public at the end of October 2016, and the local authorities even built a special safety vault for it in the newly established Primorsko Museum of History. Yeah, see, those things aren't going to get lost. But the bones, who knows? In 2017, in another burial mound, tumulus in Siliar, the archaeologists discovered the grave of an ancient Thracian warrior from the 4th to 3rd century BC whose funerary inventory contains gold-plated ceramic beads. And again, it's just some of these mounds seem to be burial mounds, just like in the Americas, just like everywhere else. Some of the mounds seem to be burial mounds. Some of the mounds don't seem to have anything buried in it at all. We're talking about different time periods, different epochs of the giants, and perhaps been later burials, but still in the far ancient past, much further back than they know really with the bad geology that they have. And they talk about the lows and all the glacial moving around of dirt and stone and everything. It's all baloney. It's just something else happened, and they just don't want to talk about that either. The only funerary inventory now found in the newly discovered grave of the giant Bronze Age man is a bronze dagger and a ceramic jar. And it's very interesting, the ceramic jar. So many of the accounts of the giants we heard about in the Americas had these ceramic jars, including one where the ceramic jars had giant corn kernels of a species of giant corn, which, corn is inexplicable in itself. The walls of the man's grave near his head and feet were painted with red paint on the inside, indicating the noble origin of the deceased. Is that what it means? I guess. Maybe. And here's some more pictures of, I guess, of the exposed excavation here in this mound. And I wonder how many more mounds can be found in Bulgaria. I'm sure a lot more. It's just, again, 21st century, and we're just catching up on this stuff, all because of guys like C.W. Holmes and W.C. Holmes, or whatever he was, C.W. Holmes, and Alex Herdliska from the Smithsonian, was just very influential on world archaeology, coming from the Americas, where archaeology was absolutely atrocious and terrible. Okay, and C.W. Schramm wrote all about it and how they suppressed all this good archaeology that revealed something of a completely different past that nobody knows anything about. And again, folks, look, the giants are sort of a linchpin in finding out what happened in the past and getting past this barrier and finding out truly about what happened in the ancient past would open the doors for so much research to be done in these areas, in these fields. In that vein of research, it would be incredible. Okay, so the failure to acknowledge these things is just keeping us from understanding what really happened in the past. And the giants are key to finding that out. Key, absolutely key. Apart from, the structures and, polygonal masonry and everything else, which seems to be this giant shared culture in the world. So, where people migrated from and to is debatable. And, and when referring to the Americas, it's not the New World. We're hearing it more and more. It's not the New World. In addition to the very man's height, another oddity discovered in the 4,000-year-old grave is the arm of another person, which was placed on the left side of the deceased. It may have been placed there at a time of the burial or afterwards, so they don't know when it was placed there. It probably might be connected with some kind of ritual, but whether the person whose arm was added to the grave was an aid to the buried one, or perhaps was the arm of his killer, we have no way of knowing. Pantova has told Nova TV. He revealed that the rescue excavations of the 4,000-year-old Bronze Age burial mound in Silesia, an area located 5 kilometers, 3 miles away from Primorsko near the Black Sea coast, actually began in 2017 following a treasure hunting raid. Okay, so they're doing this emergency excavation because of these treasure hunting raids. How about stopping the treasure hunting raids if you can? Sure, it would be no problem. Just pay somebody a couple bucks to watch that thing. But here and like everywhere in the world, they're just not doing that for some reason. Doesn't matter. But Rome and Greece and all these other places that they like to talk about or whatever, those they're gonna preserve those, no problem. All the rest of this stuff, yeah, it doesn't matter because then they don't have to explain the past. We first came across large pits dug up by the treasure hunters. After we cleared them, we discovered this grave from the Bronze Age whose inventory consists of a dagger and a jar. And the director of Primorsko Museum of History explains apparently, this was a secondary grave because it was located in the periphery of the burial mound, he adds. So it's in the periphery of the burial mound, if that's what it was. He didn't find anything else buried there. So was it a burial mound? Maybe not. The skeleton belonged to a person who was 1.90 or 2 meters tall, which is untypical of his time. What's interesting also is that above the burial pit, we found the severed arm, Pantov says. He points out the fact that while the skeleton is yet to be studied by anthropologists at first glance, the very tall man seems to have been in great health and had really good teeth. Again, really good teeth. Look at the people from the Victorian era, and their teeth are atrocious, absolutely putrid, rotting teeth everywhere in the Victorian period. So much so to the point where women actually had all their teeth removed so they could have dentures put in because they didn't want to take a chance of all their teeth rotting out there and them looking ugly. So if you had money, so the fact that people in the past had such fine teeth is just inexplicable in the terms of our species, Homo sapiens, whatever. People are not our species, just like Neanderthal and Denisovan are not our species, but compatible. You see, there's just more species of humanoids from the past that they don't want. The giants brings this into that light, and they don't want to entertain those things or any other for that matter. His teeth are very well preserved. Of course, the skull was crushed at some point by the weight of the soil. We have gathered all pieces, and we will probably have it restored and exhibited the skeleton in the museum, the museum director says. It really made an impression on us that the man was rather large and that the inside of the grave was decorated with red paint, which is a symbol of power and might, he notes. In his words, the entire region of Primorsko and the area of Silesia are connected with the advent of the Bronze Age, the extraction and processing of metal bronze. Again, the Belgica people known for introducing metallurgy to Europe. Bell beaker culture of these, humanoid type people with brachiocephalic skulls, very high arch cranial skull types. Similar to that, Bell beaker people, just to the Adena, who also just so similar. So things changed radically in the Bronze Age. Humans discovered bronze and their way of life got substantially easier. They stopped using stone and bone tools, Pantov adds. But again, as C.W. Schramm found out, that they could make flint weapons in a matter of minutes. It didn't take hours and hours and hours like they originally thought it did. But it doesn't. It just takes a very short period of time. That's why they discarded them all the time, because they didn't need them. They just make new ones, pronto. You see, so they could leave them laying all around. Another similar Bronze Age burial mound is located about 200 meters, 650 feet away from the recently excavated one in Siliar. However, it is substantially smaller. It too has been damaged by treasure hunters' raids. Unfortunately, this other mound has also suffered from the treasure hunting invasion. It should be researched and saved because the way it is going, in a few years, we won't have any intact archaeological sites left because of the treasure hunters. And we should become engaged now so we can rescue whatever can be rescued, concludes the director of the Moscow Museum of History. Yeah, well, he can crow all about it all he wants, but probably those non-human entities in charge of this reality want that to happen. They want the treasure hunters to wreck all these mounds and destroy whatever past there is to be had. Given the unusual height of the Bronze Age man buried in the newly explored tumulus in Siliar, it is worth mentioning that in recent years, some reports about discoveries of giants, quote unquote, giant skeletons in Bulgaria, that is, of people who are taller than was typical in prehistory, antiquity, or Middle Ages, have been subsequently disproved by archaeologists. So they disproved them all. This is the directive. This is what they have to do. They have to disprove them all because it can't be. But apparently, in this one that they found there, they're not saying that, and they're not saying gigantism, they're just saying it's unusually tall, and that's it. And not going any further and try to explain why that might be. Everybody should be of average height at any time. In 2016, the Burgos Regional Museum of History disproved reports about an alleged discovery of skeletons of quote unquote giants at the major medieval Byzantine and Bulgarian fortress and city of Rosacastro back in 2011. Another giant skeleton story emerged in Bulgaria in the spring of 2015 during the rescue excavations of the late antiquity fortress wall of the ancient city of Odessus, in the downtown of the Black Sea city of Varna. An exposed part of the skeleton found right underneath in the fortress wall led eyewitnesses and media to report that it belonged to a man of unusual size for the late antiquity period. The archaeologists managed to measure the skeleton only after completing the digs and found it to be only 1.65 meters tall, which is pretty much average size today. As in the case with the newly explored Bronze Age mound in Siliar, Bulgaria's southeasternmost region keeps revealing exciting archaeological discoveries. An entire previously unknown ancient Thracian fortress, the Farmakida fortress, which was the fortified residence of a dynasty in the second and first century BC, was discovered near Bulgaria's Primorsko in 2015. Primorsko municipality is also famous for the Beglik Tash Thracian rock shrine. Fortified homes of aristocrats from the ancient Thracian tribe Asti have also been discovered and or excavated near the towns of Radilovo and Sinamarets in Sarajevo municipality on the Black Sea, right to the south from Moscow municipality. So who knows if the Thracians were the original ones who developed that civilization initially? It could have been, again, one of these people that stumbled upon an already previously existing culture that was there, one that was more advanced, one with more, you know, people who are of a phenotype and morphology that was larger and taller than themselves. So just like it has been for pretty much everywhere on this planet, apparently. And what was this worldwide culture of these giants of the past, and how many epics were there, and how many millennia passed with the world just being inhabited by these creatures. So something to ponder. But I thought you might be interested in hearing about this article about, unusually tall, again, giant, skeletal remains found. Okay, just unusually large people, probably the hybrids hybrid races of giants, with human beings. And, this is where some of the DNA in our makeup comes from these giant peoples all around the world, and probably also the small people too. So we're all mixed up, and as we've heard about on the show from DNA studies, it's all mixed up and messed up, and they really can't tell things in a way that they can tell about how the real progressions happen in the past. They don't know when these things were introduced, at what time periods, and all kind of stuff. They only can guess at that. All right, so anyway, again, large scale remains, dug up in contemporary times, and you probably would have never heard about it unless you tuned into this channel here. All right, guys. I hope you liked the video. Please do hit the like button, and please do subscribe to this channel, because we look at things in a far different light than you can hear on anybody else's channel anywhere. All right, guys. Anyway, Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.